We're getting ready to begin. Good morning and welcome to the New York City Council hearing of the Committees on Public Safety, jointly with Oversight and Investigations. At this time, can everyone please silence your cell phones? If you wish to testify, please go up to the sergeant's desk to fill out a testimony slip. Written testimony can be emailed to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. At this point and going forward, no one is to approach the dais. Thank you for your cooperation. Chairs, we are ready to begin.
So good morning. I am Councilmember Gail Brewer, Chair of the Committee on Oversight and Investigations. We're here today with my wonderful colleague, Chair Hanks, and the Public Safety Committee for a joint hearing examining the impact of the NYPD Erie Basin Storage Facility fire, and I would add hurricane. Thanks to my colleagues who will join us very, very soon. The Erie Basis warehouse fire was shocking, but it should not have been surprising. Hurricane Sandy flooded the evidence storage site and contaminated it so badly it could not be cleaned or repaired. For years, the facility languished with Band-Aid fixes, like relying on temporary generators for power, while the city tried to set up new evidence warehousing. During that long stretch of time, protecting the contents of Erie Basin was apparently not a priority. When the warehouse finally went up in flames, it was the result not of freak occurrence or malice, but years of neglect, and many people, according to the material I have, said it was thanks to the generator that had been there since the flood. Lost and destroyed evidence can present a serious obstacle to the pursuit of justice. Detectives investigating cold cases and individuals pursuing appeals of criminal conviction often rely on retests of old evidence, often with new state-of-the-art methods and equipment. Obviously, when the evidence in question has been destroyed, investigators and appellants can't conduct those tests, foreclosing possibilities of both long-sought charges and release from incarceration. And there was an example of the importance of having this material in the material that I read. It is not infrequent. Unfortunately, for many in those positions, they can't even tell whether they were affected by two disasters. The NYPD's Property Evidence Tracking System, known as PETS, P-E-T-S, lacks the basic functions necessary to say how many cases were affected by the fire. A 2021 Controller report on the police's evidence and forfeiture system found PETS was obsolete more or less as soon as it was launched in 2012, right before Hurricane Sandy. And then it was never populated with information on older evidence in storage. The system, developed by outside contractor Capgemini, was not designed to aggregate evidence data. At one point, local media reported that the NYPD couldn't even say how much cash it had seized during arrests because doing so would crash the system. And of course, there was also information I'm not quite clear when the paper system went to something that was more technologically sophisticated. Long-term evidence storage can be a thankless task. Of thousands and thousands of pieces accumulated over the decades, only a few dozen or a few hundred may actually be needed for a cold case or appeal. There may be little momentum to catalog and safeguard these items in an unlikely possibility that someday they may be relevant to an investigator or attorney. But for those cases or appeals where individuals do need to take another look at a piece of physical or biological evidence, losses are devastating, and neglect to at least survey damage adds insult to injury. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Oversight and Investigations Committee staff, Legislative Counsel Nicole Kata, and Policy Analyst Alex Yablon, and for most particularly Sam Goldsmith from my office. And now I'll turn it over to the great Council Member Hanks, Chair of Public Safety.
Thank you so much, Chair Brewer. I would like to commend you and your staff members from both committees who worked hard to put together today's joint hearing on the impact of the NYPD Erie Basin Storage Facility fire. I want to thank the members of this administration and public who have joined us today. And we have also been joined, I want to acknowledge Councilmember Bottcher, who has joined us. So after Hurricane Sandy, it caused extensive damage to the Erie Basin warehouse in 2012, including the destruction of the critical physical and DNA evidence. It is deeply concerning that NYPD was not in a better position to track and compile a comprehensive inventory of the evidence stored at Erie Basin before the fire occurred at the end of last year. As a result of the fire and inadequate tracking, defense attorneys, advocacy groups, and even those trying to, they have been wrongfully convicted and have raised questions that need to be addressed as they seek to determine the impact on specific cases. The loss and damage of evidence not only hampers the pursuit of justice, but also raises doubts about the integrity of the criminal investigations and potential wrong convictions. The absence of effective evidence preservation laws in New York further compounds these challenges. Reports indicate that New York State falls behind 35 others in enacting legislation to ensure the proper storage and management of biological evidence. So today's discussion is critical as we seek a better understanding of the shortcomings in evidence storage and management within NYPD, the measures necessary to safeguard our facilities and evidence, and the changes required to protect the rights of the accused to ensure a fair and just criminal justice system for those accused of crime and those who have been victims of crime. Our goal here today is to find effective solutions, identify necessary reforms, and provide a critical support to our law enforcement agencies to maintain the integrity of evidence and protect the rights of all New Yorkers. Thank you so much for being here, and with that, I will turn it back to Chair Brewer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you'll be sworn in. I also want to thank the Innocence Project.
Thank you, chairs. We will now hear testimony from the administration. We'll hear from Michael Clark, Christine Ryan, Neil Fenton, and Captain John Breslin. Before we begin, I will administer the affirmation. Panelists, please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin.
We also have on Zoom Councilmember Holden. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Hanks, Chair Brewer, and members of the council. I am Michael Clark. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the New York City Police Department, and I'm joined here today by Christine Ryan, the Deputy Commissioner of Management and Budget, John Breslin, the Commanding Officer of the Property Clerk Section, and Neil Fenton, Executive Director of our Legal Bureau's Investigative Support Unit. And on behalf of Police Commissioner Kichinel Sewell, I'm here to testify before your committees regarding the impact of the unfortunate fire at the department's Erie Basin facility in Red Hook, Brooklyn. On December 13th, 2022, a 3-alarm fire tore through the department's Erie Basin evidence warehouse for many hours until it could be contained by the valiant efforts of the fire department. Unfortunately, the fire rendered the facility almost a complete loss. The warehouse at the Erie Basin facility at the time of the fire was primarily used to store items containing biological evidence from crimes. These items were stored in biological evidence containers, or BECs, which are cardboard or paper barrels that are most effective way to store biological evidence, as their materials and design are best equipped to limit the moisture contamination. Storing biological evidence in plastic or metal containers can cause degradation of the biological samples. To be clear, all the biological evidence which was stored at Erie Basin was collected and invoiced prior to Hurricane Sandy in 2012, and much of that evidence had already been significantly damaged by floods, as you noted. It has also been important to note that evidence from sex assault evidence collection kits were not stored at Erie Basin. At the time the evidence was collected, the district attorneys, the NYPD, and the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner determined which pieces may be relevant to any given investigation, and items were tested using state-of-the-art procedures at the time. As a result, much of the evidence had already been tested, and the results of those DNA tests were not destroyed by the fire. Much has changed about our evidence collection and storage practices since Hurricane Sandy. All biological evidence that has been taken into custody since Sandy for long-term storage is stored at a warehouse in Brooklyn, which is above the floodplain. Moreover, the evidence is stored on the 6th floor of this location and is fully equipped with a modern fire suppression system. We have since modernized our evidence tracking as well. Each item of evidence, when taken into custody, is signed a unique electronic invoice number in the department's form systems, which each officer accesses through the department computers or department-issued smartphones. This system allows evidence to be assiduously and easily tracked through every step of the process to ensure that the chain of custody is documented at every turn, from the initial collection to its movement between different storage and testing facilities to ultimately its use in court. As I stated earlier, all of the biological evidence stored at Erie Basin predated Hurricane Sandy in 2012, and unfortunately, at the time, the department was still using a paper invoice system. We had just switched to electronic. It has been impractical to comb through the entire library of invoices to determine each item of evidence that was being stored at Erie Basin Warehouse. Additionally, given the age of the evidence, with at least 10 and a half years having passed since even the newest evidence was invoiced and stored at Erie Basin, it would be expected that a significant number of the items would be associated with criminal cases which have been sealed pursuant to state law. Together with the fact that much of this evidence may also contain may be connected to sexual assault cases raises obvious privacy concerns. Much of this information simply cannot or should not be released to the public or attorneys where there is no indication they represent the individual with an interest in the case or a piece of evidence. The most effective, efficient, and relevant path forward, given the challenges posed by the fire, is for individuals or their attorneys who feel they may have an interest in a particular case or piece of evidence to make the request as to the status of the piece of evidence. That's why NYPD has dedicated a team to liaison with district attorneys' offices in order to expedite the department's response to any concerns and requests from those who feel that cases, open or closed, may have been affected by the fire. Requests by these individuals or their attorneys are fast-tracked. While this evidence is connected to older cases, an invoice number may no longer be at hand to the individuals. Any small piece of information, such as a time frame or a name associated with the case, can be used to identify relevant invoices. Thank you for the opportunity to testify about these important issues. We look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Caban is on Zoom and Councilmember Velasquez is here. I just want to add that to the discussion. All right, thank you. One of the questions I have is in the material that I have before I ask specifically, it indicated, and you said something about the 6th floor in Brooklyn, but how many warehouses does NYPD have, and are there ones that you would feel are sufficient and up to date, just generally, the number of warehouses and where material is stored?
So we have 12 property clerk facilities. So we have 2 auto pounds, we have 5 borough offices, 1 in each borough, and 5 warehouses.
So you have 5 warehouses?
Yes.
Okay, and that includes the one in Brooklyn where you said it's on the 6th floor or whatever that
Yes.
discussion was? Okay, and are they the ones that you would describe, they are not going to be flood-prone, fire-prone, et cetera?
So we, for the most part, do have fire suppression in these facilities, and where we don't, we're looking to upgrade that. And we make an effort to make sure that the evidence is on as high as it can be, either on a higher floor, as that is in Brooklyn, which is where we are now taking all of the long-term storage for our biological evidence, or on higher shelves if it's on a lower floor. But we are now taking all the long-term storage for our biological evidence is now on the 6th floor of that facility in Brooklyn.
Okay, and when you say we are working toward fire suppression, in other words, other places still need fire suppression? It's a little scary
There's one
to listen
location.
to.
There's only one location that doesn't have fire suppression at this
Okay, and you're working to do something
Yes.
about that before there's a flood or a fire?
Yes. And in addition, I just think it's important, we did recognize that we do have some challenges with our facilities, not only some of the age of the facilities, but also just having that disparate system of storing the property, which is why we did request of OMB and the council and receive funding for a new consolidated state-of-the-art facility. Unfortunately, the funding for that facility was removed from our budget as part of the significant cuts that were taken in 2020. We have reinvigorated the conversations with OMB requesting that funding be restored, because we understand how important it is to really have a state-of-the-art facility to maintain this important evidence.
Okay, because I know that the municipal library, also known as Doris, has a brand-new warehouse that came in under the previous administration. I'm a big fan of archives. So maybe you could partner with them? I'm just saying as a discussion point. Have you talked to them at all?
We haven't about this specifically, but we do work with Doris on our retention of our materials.
Okay. And are they in all 5 boroughs, these
Yes, we have property clerk facilities in all 5 boroughs.
Okay. I'm not going to get into tow pounds. Manhattan doesn't have one. We will talk about that at a different hearing. What factors determine which evidence is stored at a given facility? Is it to do with what has a 6th floor, or what is fire suppression or not? How do you determine today in 2023?
Again, the long-term storage all goes to one location. The property moves through the system at different points, so it may spend some time at the borough-based facilities, and then the longer-term storage is, as we indicate, we try to identify the best location we have within our facilities.
And so what division of NYPD makes that determination?
It's the property clerk section.
Okay, and so can you just describe the process that evidence comes in? Can you describe the process, how it works?
You can have Captain Breslin address that.
Thank you, Captain.
Yes, how are you?
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So when an officer or a detective comes in possession of property that needs to be vouchered and stored within one of our facilities, they will voucher it at the local command in our forms property system. They will be assigned...
At the precinct, is
at
that
the
what you're saying?
precinct.
At the
So
precinct.
everything usually starts at the precinct, or transit district or police PSA, and it will be assigned a specific voucher number. If it's a large item and cannot fit into one of our storage bags, which has a barcode, it will be assigned a barcode, and everything will be tracked to that one voucher number. We can fit about 20 items on one voucher. And then from there, depending on specifically what the type of property is, again, if it's something that needs a lab exam, that will be sent directly to the lab on a midnight tour. If it's regular general property, each precinct has, or patrol borough has their own schedule when they will bring it to the borough facility, which again, we have 5 borough facilities. They will bring that property to the borough facility, who will intake it at the borough facility, and then it'll either be stored there. If it's a very large item, it will have to go to one of our warehouses.
What would be an example of a large item? Just
A large item could be such, large intakes from like warrants, things like that. It could be kitchen sinks. It could be anything, something very, very large that just won't fit in one of our facilities, so we have a big warehouse. I'm trying to think of something that's very big, but yeah.
You have
we've
like
got
a couch.
couches, yes,
Okay.
again, anything that just won't fit in, a small facility.
And is this the kind of process that needs to be updated, or do you feel that this is a process that works? Is this typical around the country, for instance?
I believe our system is working. We upgraded to the forms property system. So yes, I think we're going in the right direction with this. And where we're storing it, again, as the commissioner mentioned, some of our facilities are a little older and just need slightly upgrade. But again, having a one facility, state-of-the-art type facility, would probably be the best way going forward.
The mayor should pay for it, not the city council, I'm just saying.
So, but yes, again, going forward, because that definitely would assist and be able to consolidate everything, and we wouldn't be spread out through the city.
Okay. I know you mentioned that the Erie Basin didn't have storage of rape kits, but I'm wondering, obviously that's a particular interest. How are they properly stored, safeguarded, and maintained? That's obviously a particular concern.
So the sexual assault kits, the rape test kits are stored at a warehouse in Queens. And they are also, like all of our biological evidence, we make sure that we're storing it in the proper containers, which is very important to make sure that we don't have any degradation of the materials. So it's paper bags in paper barrels. Which is important to make sure that there is no contamination or ability for bacteria, to mitigate against bacteria growing. So we follow the guidelines for the storage of sexual assault kits.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Hanks, Councilmember De La Rosa here, and Justin Brand are both here, council members.
Thank you so much, Chair Brewer. Just for point of clarity, how much was requested by OMB for the additional costs of storage?
So the original funding that we had that was cut was $425 million. we added escalation to that. So what we would need now would be over $600 million, but we would be talking about quite a large facility that not only had, all of the state-of-the-art building systems in the facility, but also a system that, in addition to our current electronic tracking system, you may have seen in stores and things like that, shelving that you can identify when something's removed from the shelving, a real sort of state-of-the-art IT system within the facility as well. So it is a hefty price tag, but that's a facility that would serve the department in the city for decades to come. So I do think it is a worthy investment.
Thank you for that. So currently, are all of the buildings where you have evidence stored city-owned?
We have, a few leased properties. Actually, the facility in Brooklyn that we were discussing, where the material's on the 6th floor, that is a leased facility.
Sorry. So what other agencies and entities are responsible for storing evidence other than NYPD?
So, I mean, I think for long-term storage, it is us. Obviously, OCME does have a piece when the items go to OCME for testing. They're storing it with their protocols, but when they're done, it typically comes back to us.
Sorry, thank you. So you mentioned that you would lease space. Are the facilities locked and restricted to limited personnel to maintain the integrity of the evidence?
Yes.
And what safety protocols are put in place to limit that?
So do you want to speak to that, Captain? Sure.
So all the warehouses and borough facilities are, they're manned during the day, again, personally for public service. And then later on in the evening, they'll be shut, alarmed, and they have security cameras.
So are they all NYPD or civilians who are providing security?
Providing service.
Or services?
Service is all members of the NYPD.
Excellent, thank you. Are the facilities temperature controlled, given that the DNA evidence must be properly preserved and to prevent degradation?
We have full temperature control HVAC in some of our facilities, but not all. So we are looking to upgrade where we need to ensure we have full temperature control.
What would you say? I know that you gave a price tag of $425 million and at the low side and $600+ million on the high side. What would you need right away to maintain, the integrity of evidence now? Is it only $425 million, or is there an ask that's taking care of the things that are necessary right now?
So it's actually it would be the 630 is what we would need for that new facility. We're pricing out some of the costs to upgrade the HVAC systems and the climate control in some of the facilities. It would be several $1 million. It could be up to 5 to 10 million.
Do we take into consideration the locations of these facilities? Are they near flooding? Are they environmental hazards? Are they susceptible to the weather?
So we're along with the decision to make sure we're keeping facilities on the 6th floor. In other facilities, we're trying to avoid having things on the lower floors, or if unfortunately that's the only solution, we're making sure that anything that would potentially be most susceptible to flooding would be on higher shelves. But we are, our practice now is to have this type of material really all in that location on the 6th floor.
Thank you. So Erie Basin was flooded during Hurricane Sandy. Sergeant John Capozzi of the NYPD Property Clerk Division testified that OSHA shut down access to Erie Basin after the storm due to concerns of contaminated floodwaters. 10 inches of water flooded the bottom level of Erie Basin, according to Sergeant Capozzi. What was the damage to the facility and the evidence housed inside after Hurricane Sandy? Can you answer that for me?
Well, most of the biological evidence on the first and second level was considered contaminated. The cardboard barrels filled with water, and it had not been remediated. And then again, the system did knock out the electricity. So yes, the facility was running on generator. So other than that,
Thank you. So news outlets reported that between 5,000 and 10,000 barrels of evidence were destroyed because of Hurricane Sandy. Is this true? And if so, what was lost?
During Hurricane Sandy, there was about 5,000 barrels in Erie Basin, and there's about 1,100 barrels in Kingsland Avenue warehouse. So a total of approximately about 6,000 barrels were contaminated during that time period.
Thank you so much, and I will bring it back to, I would like to recognize Councilmember Ariola has joined us, and I would like to pass it back to Chair Brewer and my colleagues who may have questions. Thank you.
I just want to know generally how, what was the accounting of the evidence that was lost because of Sandy? And then, of course, you had the fire after that. But it is strange that Sandy took place and then there was a fire and it wasn't addressed before the fire. So what was lost because of Sandy? How do you keep track of that, or if you did?
So we do have information with regard to which barrels were in which location, but unfortunately everything prior to the PET system that you mentioned, which came online really at the end of 2011, early 2012, was paper-based, and it was not the entry of retroactive information into the system had not taken place. In 2021, we upgraded that, so you've heard us refer to Forms. So we now use an IT system, which is Forms Property, which is a more advanced system with more enhanced elements. So that allows us more electronic and technologically based ability to track those facilities. But unfortunately, everything that was in the warehouse was in paper logbooks.
So in your other facilities, is it still paper? Is it all digitized? Obviously, some of that material's been there for a while. What's the status of the tracking in the other facilities?
Everything that comes in now and everything that's
No,
gone-
now, but what's there? I know everything coming in now is digitized, but previously?
anything before 2012 is not digitized. We are working with a vendor to see what it would cost and what it would take to digitize those prior paper records so that we have everything in digital format.
All right, Councilmember, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Brewer. I just have a couple more questions. How has the NYPD ascertained what was destroyed in Erie Basin warehouse fire?
As we mentioned before, everything's stored in the paper-based system, so we know how many barrels were there. We know specifically what barrels were there and what was in those barrels. But we only know that because we have to check the paper-based system. So again, if someone was looking for a specific piece of evidence, we'd have to refer to these logbooks, comb through the paper-based system and let you know which property was in there.
What is the condition of Erie Basin facility now?
So essentially, the entire warehouse was in such a state of disrepair after the fire that it was demolished. So it's gone.
Thank you so much. I'll pass it back to Chair Brewer.
Councilmember Justin Brad has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Last March, I know NYPD had made a request to OMB for $424 million to fund and build a new state-of-the-art property storage facility. Could you tell us where we're at with that request?
So we actually had funding in our budget of $425 million, which we received, I think in 2015 or 2016. That was cut in 2020. We have since gone back to OMB to request the escalated value of that funding, which is about $630 million, and those discussions are ongoing. So we are looking for that funding to be restored so that we can move forward with building a state-of-the-art consolidated facility.
Okay, and so the original funding request was for how much and when was it made?
Originally, it was $425 million, which was in, I think, fiscal year 15 was when we first had the discussions and that funding added to our budget. First, there was some funding for design and site acquisition. Then there was funding for the actual construction. And we were working toward that new facility and getting started on that when the funding was cut in 2020.
Okay. And is Erie Basin still running on backup generator power?
It is at this time. We have just commenced the project to do their restoration. We now have the full contract and the funding for that. It's going to take about a year.
Okay, and it's been on backup generated power since?
Since
for how long?
Sandy, yes.
Since Hurricane Sandy?
Yes.
So why for that long?
There were a lot of different pieces to that, unfortunately. One, it was securing the funding, which involved working with the federal government, FEMA guidelines. When we got that funding, we were then in a place where the lease for that facility was within a time frame that required us to renew it. We then had to go through ULURP, and the ULURP process was unfortunately protracted during that time. We couldn't do any of the construction on the site if we didn't have confirmation that we were actually going to have an extended lease, as that wouldn't have been a good use of that funding. So that process took a significant period of time. And then once that ULURP came through, there were additional things that had to be done with the federal government. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you go back and you look at it, and every step of the way, things sort of broke to the left when you would have wanted them to break to the right. So we are in the place now to move forward with that upgrade, but I understand that it's been quite a long time.
And how much of that money is city funding? You said there's some FEMA money there.
Yeah, the majority of the funding is actually federal funding. It's FEMA funding.
And what's the total cost?
That I'll have to get back to you on.
Okay, I'm most interested to know what the city portion of that would be.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just a question about wooden barrels and cardboard boxes, because to the layperson, that sounds not like a good storage mechanism. Can you just describe, is that storing evidence in different kinds of containers, or that's the right kind of container that is normal to be storing?
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
With respect to the cardboard packaging, they're known as BECS, Biological Evidence Container
Right, yep.
System. And based on our investigations, based upon dealing with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and storing of biological evidence, in order to prevent contamination, we're advised to put that in paper packaging so it's not exposed. It doesn't create contamination later on. Degradation.
And same thing with the barrels, that's the same idea?
Same idea.
Okay. The question also, just back to the fire, I guess there were contractors at Erie Basin on December 13th. We want to know, were they supposed to be there? Were they licensed? You know, we don't know exactly, I think, why the fire started. Some say the generator, some say electrical work. Can you be more specific about why it did start? What were the contractors doing there, et cetera?
So the contractors were there to do some work at the facility, but they were not doing any work in the facility in the portion of the location.
They were at the tow
fire
pound, I
commenced.
assume.
Yes.
Okay, so can you be specific as to why, again, the fire did start, if you know?
Yeah, so our understanding, the fire was started, it was an electrical fire that was started,
Not the generator?
nothing has been told us that connected to the generator. It was electrical wiring in the wall.
Okay. Are there plans to relocate evidence from Erie Basin during the electrical work project, especially because there were civilians accessing a space where evidence was supposed to be secured? Now, maybe that was or not, you indicate that they were not there, but I still want to understand a little bit more about the fire. Was there a time period when contractors were around during that time period?
So we have contractors at various facilities who work on various aspects of things that need to be done that we can't do in-house. We ensure that they're licensed, that they're properly bonded, and everything needs to be done contractually. There is nothing to indicate that anything tied to contractor work contributed to the fire.
Okay. Now, you indicated FEMA money is paying. Was there any insurance that is also available to?
Yeah, so the landlord...
Going back to the Chair of Finance's question, the money.
Yes, so the landlord has insurance, and we're working with the landlord on, because we are extending the lease of the site, not to be storing this type of evidence, but obviously we still use this for vehicles, and we'd like to continue to do that. So we're having ongoing discussions with the landlord about rebuilding the building, and that will be covered hopefully in full, but at least in part by insurance.
And what would the building be used for when it's rebuilt by FEMA and insurance and I guess some city money?
So we haven't made a final determination on that, but I think we would be looking to have it be for certain vehicles that need to be inside. Sometimes we have evidentiary vehicles, bikes, and things of that nature.
We have evidentiary vehicles all over the neighborhoods at fire hydrants and places. We would love to get rid of them.
So we are also working on that as well and have actually
Not on this hearing, I understand, but just so I can add it to the discussion.
understood.
I saw a whole bunch this weekend. What kinds, I guess I also want to know, when you talk about a new facility and it's costing up to $600 million, do you have a location? Because that's a very big facility to have to site.
We don't have a location at this time, although as we are always looking for different sites for different things, we are often identify through our searches and through DCAS's searches, private developers and things like that where they're looking to build, raw space. So there are a couple different sites that have sort of the size and would potentially work at this, but because we don't have the funding yet in the budget, we can only go so far in any of those discussions.
Okay. Obviously, we are a toe pound at the same time in Manhattan, just throwing that out. Does the system upgrade allow for looking at records in aggregate, which pets could not do?
Again, with regards to getting a facility, it wouldn't change the system that we have. We've just enhanced our ability to store and retrieve property to give to the public or for the property to go to court. Again, we are, as the Commissioner mentioned, looking back and looking into possibly digitizing the paper-based system. So that's something, but again, a new facility would just make it easier for us to store and retrieve our property that we already have.
Yeah, I just need $600 million and a site. Councilmember Ariola.
Thank you, Chairs. What efforts, if any, has the NYPD made to communicate to the people whose cases involved affected evidence, their attorneys, victims in cold cases, and/or the public about what was destroyed?
Good morning, Councilmember. We have been working with the district attorney's offices. If there are open questions regarding a wrongful conviction allegation, or for that matter, a cold case that deals with a specific case that the district attorney wants to move forward on, they contact us, and we have been asking for the list and the voucher numbers, and we've been able to, make a determination, number one, if the property was part of that destroyed at Erie Basin during the fire, and furthermore, if it is available, then we get back to them hopefully within 2 and 3 weeks.
Thank you very much.
And just back to the aggregate system and what pets cannot do, is there a software issue here, or is there, I am concerned about the technology, both for current and for future and just generally.
So the current system we're using replaced pets.
Right.
So it's forms property, and it does have built-in reporting functions that aggregate property by type and by activity. So it's relatively new. It's been in place. We've been using it since about 2021, but it does have that functionality.
Okay. And you indicated, so does it work from the precinct level all the way to the pathway that the captain described?
Yes.
All right, and have you gotten any complaints about it, the new system? People always complain about everything.
Oh, complaints from who are specific?
Officers or people using the system.
Well,
they are
again,
allowed to complain.
If the complaints from the officers is more of probably user error. Someone might have, who didn't know how to do one thing, so we help them navigate through the system. But I know under the Comptroller's audit, there were some things that were identified, and we have corrected those systems.
Okay.
So
What were some examples of what the challenges were?
one of the issues were the scanning of the person or the claimant's ID at the precincts. We have done created a policy and done training, created a training bureau memo, which was sent out. So that's one of the things that was identified during the Comptroller's audit. We also there was the found property letter. And we have created one. A form letter is in the system, and we are now sending those out to the found property. And again, those are some things we have identified or were identified through the Comptroller's audit, and we have corrected.
Okay. I would assume that places like the chief medical officer and examiner, are they also coordinated on the same system? In other words, the other agencies that you might interact with, are they working on the same system?
Yes,
So it's a total coordination, or
Yes.
seamless, supposedly.
yes.
Okay, let's see if I have any other questions. Did you find that as a result of Hurricane Sandy and the fire, that there were cases that had been brought to your attention where there was, storage was an issue? I know, there's a lot of feeling that it was older evidence, wasn't necessarily needed, but were there either attorneys or cases that came to your attention where there was lack of evidence, so to speak, because it was no longer there?
So I think it's fair to say, especially in the early years after Sandy, there was much more evidence that was, at the time of Sandy, that was active cases, right? Significant active cases. So we were having people testify at trial a lot about the the unavailability of the evidence. That has slowed down over the years. I think there were 0 in 2021, whereas it might have been 90 something. Actually, if I give me a second, I can probably pull it up. Oh, yeah. So in 2013, we testified 94 times.
Okay.
By 2020, it was 0, based on the property stored at Erie Basin.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how much of your NYPD's budget is allocated for this evidence tracking, and how much for preservation?
So I don't have that number on me, but I will get that to you.
Okay, it would be helpful to know. Do you have a tracking system when something is missing? Because obviously, that could be true, I guess. With this new system, you'll have a better sense of it than you did in the past. I'm sure beats the paper, anyway.
Yes, ma'am. So again, if we can't locate an evidence, let me go back. So evidence at every point and every turn, when it goes from one facility to another, is a PTR is created, which is a property transfer receipt.
Right.
So it's documented wherever it's going. So if it's going from the precinct to one of my facilities, or if it goes from one of my facilities out to court or to the lab, it is tracked and documented in that system.
Okay, and so, and to the best of your knowledge, this is current, not necessarily in the past, but current?
This is absolutely current, yes.
Okay. Is there a difference in protocol for storage for felony versus misdemeanors? Or is it the same process, if
We
needed?
still have the same process, it's just our retention guidelines are slightly different.
Okay, and what are the difference in the retention guidelines? How long they're there, I assume?
Yes, how long they're there. So if you have a general property for a felony, we'll keep that for at least 151 days, or depending on, it also depends on if it's pled guilty or if someone takes or is convicted. If someone's convicted, it'll be 3/4 of their sentence will hold on to that property.
Okay.
Pled guilty, then it's 151 days, or then if there's a request for it, then it's an additional 270 days. Then you go to misdemeanors where you have, it'll be kept for 18 months. Again, and then biological evidence, completely different. We keep that at least for 5 years.
Thank you
Just,
that's really helpful. Go ahead.
Just would like to add, with respect to the property retention guidelines, we also do keep on murders, rape cases, cases with no statute of limitations. We keep that indefinitely, as well as some other categories that are classified by the NYPD.
Okay, so that would mean a different storage facility, or depending on the time, or it has nothing to do with the time frames?
It mostly has to deal with the statute of limitations and whether or not the case would be pending. There's no statute of limitations on murder or rape cases. As such, the department keeps that indefinitely.
You need a big storage space.
Agreed.
$620 million space.
Councilmember Ariola.
Thank you. I'm just asking a question from my colleague, Councilmember Holden, who's on Zoom, and he just was interested in knowing why there wasn't a sprinkler system installed in the facility.
So there was, in fact, a sprinkler system at Erie Base. Unfortunately, it was not adequate to address the heat of this fire.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Councilmember Stevens. I want to know, after the fire, were you able to communicate to people, or maybe you didn't know whose cases were affected, or their attorneys? Obviously, these are often cases that were quite dated.
Council member, we didn't communicate directly to the people. We communicated via the district attorney's office. So if the district attorney's office had indicated there was a cold case investigation, or for that matter, there was an allegation of wrongful conviction, they would put the inquiry as to the specific request, and they would also indicate whether or not that person or attorney who was requesting was authorized to make that request.
Okay. The other question I have is, in the future, God forbid, something like this should happen, do you have a way of communicating? Hopefully, you'll have less paper, there'll be a better system for tracking and so on, but would there be some system for communicating? God forbid this should happen in the future?
I mean, I think having it in the computer-based system is certainly would make this a much easier lift. There's still some legal issues where, we can't communicate sealed records to people, but I think, that's something we'll have to, hopefully this is a never happen again, but we'll have to think about it, the best way going forward.
Do you think there's any legislation, I know the answer will be no to this, that would implement evidence retention requirements? And if so, what factors do you think should be part of such legislation and requirements? I know Mr. Clark is going to say, no, please don't give me any more legislation.
Yeah,
but you do need some guidelines, I think.
Right, and I think we do have some evidence retention guidelines, and if there's legislation, we're always willing to work with the council on pieces of legislation, but I don't have anything right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge Corona Arts and Science Academy School is here. Thank you so much for being part of the political process, and welcome to the People's House. Thank you.
Just the final question is, just in terms of procedures, you obviously have a very informed police department in terms of these issues, but how the procedures and practice and protocols, are they available to the public so that public understands what they are? You're obviously describing them here today, and we appreciate that. But is there some indication of how it's communicated to the public?
You mean the procedure on
Yes.
on holding property?
Yes,
I don't. I mean, there's some in the patrol guide, but I don't believe that we have a procedure specifically to this online.
Okay. Captain.
But
I mean, you articulated it extremely well, sir, but
Well, again, for retrieval purposes, so when someone gets a receipt for their property, it is, all the information is on that receipt, so they can, and again, we are on the website, so if they're looking for our facilities, what time we're open, everything else, or our phone number, everything's on there as well.
okay. I mean, we're always looking for real-time information, but I understand it's on the piece of paper. Real-time is something that I feel strongly in. All right, I don't have any more questions. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Nope. Thank you very much. We appreciate
Thank you very much.
your input.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, chairs. In 1 minute, we will turn to public testimony. We will be limiting public testimony today to 3 minutes each. For in-person panelists, please come up to the table once your name has been called. For virtual panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the Sergeant at Arms will set the timer and give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the Sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. If anyone is here in person who has not yet signed up to testify, please visit the Sergeant's table and complete a witness slip now. All right. We will now hear from our first in-person panel. We'll hear from Elizabeth Felber, Elizabeth Daniel Vasquez, Rebecca Brown, Martin Tenkleff, and Sheila Howef. Thank you so much. If Elizabeth Felber is here, you may begin when ready.
Good morning. My name is, do I have to keep pressing it? No. I'm Elizabeth Felber. I head the Wrongful Conviction Unit at the Legal Aid Society. And while the Erie Basin fire was not an intentional act of sabotage, it follows a pattern of negligence by the NYPD when it comes to preserving property. The mass destruction of vouchered evidence from criminal cases has occurred now 3 times, in 1995 at Pearson Place, in 2012 at Sandy, and now 2022. And while listening to the prior speakers talk about their communications, ongoing communications with the district attorney offices, they have ignored us. We have written to them twice, asking for an accounting and which one of our clients' cases have been affected, and they've never responded. Their lack of transparency with us, the defense community, speaks volumes. The unanswered questions about what steps, if any, they took to prevent this disaster and what property were destroyed, for us at least, are unfortunately not surprising given NYPD's repeated failure to produce vital evidence for cases where the conviction integrity units, at our request to retest or test DNA. I just want to point to something that was said by counsel, which is most of the cases were sealed. This is not true. At least the cases where we seek to have DNA tested, they are largely murder convictions where our clients are serving life in prison, and unfortunately, most are from the 1990s when mass incarceration began, and so it was well before 2012, and we are relying on paper logbooks. Perhaps that is why once we've convinced CIUs to test or retest DNA, where we have provided them evidence that our clients are actually innocent or wrongfully convicted, in each case, NYPD has told them that the evidence is either lost or destroyed. This has extremely grave consequences for our clients who remain incarcerated as a result, or in part as a result. For the sake of time, I'll just give you 2 examples. One client is in his 36th year of incarceration. The CIU agreed to retest after we provided them with numerous affidavits of people attesting to another person being the actual shooter, including the sisters of the actual shooter. However, NYPD told the CIU that the evidence was destroyed. This is interesting because they said it was Sandy, and up here they told us that Sandy was for active cases. This was a conviction from 1987, and we learned this year that it was destroyed in Sandy. Another client served 40 years while maintaining his innocence, and he would still be incarcerated today had he not been granted clemency. The CIU in that case agreed to test the murder weapon found at the scene. If his DNA had been excluded, which we believe it would be, he would likely be exonerated. Again, NYPD told that CIU that the evidence cannot be located. We now know that all the evidence collected before 2012 was tracked in paper logbooks. There needs to be transparency for why it's so hard to locate this evidence and why sufficient protocols were not in place before the Erie Basin fire destroyed so much evidence, and with it, our clients' opportunities to exonerate themselves. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Daniel Vasquez. I'm the director of the Science and Surveillance Project at Brooklyn Defender Services. What we heard this morning was emblematic of what we've seen from the NYPD as it relates to evidence collection, processing, maintenance, and retention over the last 20 plus years. The program that the NYPD has in place is pure chaos. We had an instance back more than 15 years ago where a gentleman named Alan Newton brought suit against the New York City for the very fact that the city did not keep track of evidence in cases. He spent years trying to find the evidence in his case in order to have it tested and couldn't. He brought suit against the city for its recklessness and negligence in maintaining evidence systems, and he won. The city was held liable. There was a moment of discussion here about what are we going to do in order to do better in terms of evidence tracking, making sure that we know where evidence is and that it's being safely kept, and then nothing happened. Sandy comes. Entire swaths of evidence get destroyed. There's no clear communication from the NYPD about what's been lost. There's no clear communication to clients who are actually going to trial about what has happened to the evidence in their cases. There is a discussion. There is a moment of, we need to do something about this. Things need to change. And then nothing happened. We're here again. The NYPD has said for the last 10 years that they are going to build an Amazon-style warehouse that is a one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. They've said they had a site. They've said they were going to put technology in place to solve this, and then nothing happens. I have clients going to trial right now in homicide cases where we do not know whether the evidence was lost in the Erie Basin fire or not. That should not be the case. And so what we are asking for is an evidence tracking system in this city that matches what happens in other cities. We are asking for the NYPD, who admits that they are the entity that is in charge of keeping track of evidence. We are asking for them to actually know what they have and where it is. They have had the ability to build massive surveillance technology systems that keep track of data about my clients that I wish they wouldn't, and yet they can't keep track of the evidence that they are responsible for. They've told this council that their form system that they came online with in 2021 is a technological solution to the problem. When you were asking them whether or not there were complaints about the system, what they didn't tell you is that they had a coding error when they came online with the system that caused them to lose track of evidence for a significant period of time. When they sent evidence to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, it was sent out as a batch within the form system, but the OCME tests evidence consecutively. When they sent a case back, it caused the form system to track every item of evidence that was sent to the OCME at that time as having been sent back to the NYPD when it had not. So there was evidence sitting at the OCME that the form system said that the NYPD has. They have not been clear about the problems that they have had with their technological solutions. What they were clear on was that they had a budget in order to do something about this for years, and yet nothing happened. And so what we are asking for is for the NYPD to actually take seriously their responsibility. This is one action that they are obligated to control. They are obligated to know where evidence is, they are obligated to know how it has been stored, and they are obligated to be able to tell us if a catastrophic event like a fire occurs, that the evidence in your case is gone. They need to do better, and we would ask the council to help us call on them to actually maintain their duty in this area.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Brown. I'm the policy director with the Innocence Project. I've been with the project for 18 years. And throughout that time, we have been mystified by the evidence preservation system here in New York. We're known to be sort of the organization that really transformed sort of the power of DNA, yet in our home state, we don't even have evidence rules that are consistent across jurisdictions, across boroughs. And you know, despite great progress in the nation, and there really has been, New York lags behind the rest of the country. In fact, in the last 2 years, the states of Utah and Indiana, not particularly easy states to pass these types of laws in, have passed statewide laws requiring the uniform retention of biological evidence. You know, I can't even overstate the human cost of this. I mean, there was reference to Alan Newton in our written testimony. We provided a couple of other examples. 2 men whose evidence was found by pure serendipity. One was because there was a lab merger at some point, and we just suddenly were able to find the evidence literally in another state. And in Alan Newton's case, this man was filing pro se for 12 years and told that his evidence was lost for different reasons, asbestos, I mean, just different reasons over time. And at the end of the day, the evidence was found, it excluded him. You know, this was insane. This was 12 years lost, taken from his life. And there are so many other examples that I could provide you with. But I did want to really focus on Chair Hanks's solutions, right? That we want to be solution-oriented. I was a member of a 22-member technical working group that was funded by the Department of Justice, administered by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that looked for over 2.5 years at evidence retention practices across the country, issued a set of very clear recommendations. I can tell you what they are very quickly. That could be implemented at the city level. It should certainly be also implemented at the state level, but it requires a retention of biological evidence for, at minimum, the length of time that a person is incarcerated, regardless of plea, in the following 5 categories. It's rape, murder, felony assault, kidnapping, and robbery. And I thought it was very interesting to hear in the testimony before that, sort of if somebody pleads guilty, it's as though, we shouldn't be concerned about the evidence anymore. We should be very concerned about the evidence. There are 3,300 people that have been demonstrated innocent in this country since 1989. A full 25% of them pled guilty to crimes they didn't commit. So we must retain that evidence in plea cases, and that was actually one of the core recommendations from the Department of Justice working group on this very issue. Also, inventorying evidence. That evidence must be inventoried. We don't have, pre-2012, those are the majority of our cases, and we have a paper-based system for that, or we don't know where that evidence is still. This is unconscionable. So I really want to say governments can be forgiven, right, for not anticipating the probative value of DNA, but today we know, right, and there is no excuse for not having a uniform, consistent system for locating evidence, tracking it, and frankly, for sanctions and remedies, well, really remedies for people whose evidence has been destroyed. So I'll close there, but happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I definitely would like to speak offline.
Good morning. My name is Marty Tankleff. I'm an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and the Law Center. I'm also special counsel to Barkett, Epstein, Kieran O'Day, and Latarka. But prior to that, I was 90T 3844. I was imprisoned wrongfully in New York State for almost 18 years. Thankfully, in my case, there was evidence that was actually properly stored. And we discovered it, and it helped lead to my exoneration. But since my freedom, I've had the opportunity to walk innocent men out of prison. But during that time, I've frankly been ashamed of working with the NYPD. And I think one of the statements that I was struggling with today was when I heard Captain Breslin say, "I believe our system is working." As somebody as high ranking as captain, there shouldn't be belief. We should know whether or not the tracking system of evidence is working. We shouldn't think about it, we should know. Currently, I'm working on a case of the man of Raymond Santana where I have an evidence voucher and there's a voucher number for a piece of evidence. For almost 6 years, I still have not been able to obtain that piece of evidence. Why? Why? I get the runaround from NYPD, I get different pieces of evidence that's provided to me, and that is because their tracking system is inadequate. I think the people who are running the system are not properly trained in doing this. Also frustrating to hear is that there's also a dollar amount put on lives. When we hear how many innocent men are wrongfully convicted and how much money the city pays out for those wrongful convictions, imagine if NYPD and the prosecutors in this state did it right from the beginning. All that money that was spent on the payouts, if they would just do their jobs from the very beginning, we could have warehouses, we could have people who are properly trained, and we wouldn't have innocent men and women in prison. We see this time and time again. Last year, we had the highest number of exonerations in this nation, almost 230 innocent people. That number should scare people. And imagine if there was evidence at the basin that was destroyed that could lead to somebody's exoneration. Will that person languish in prison? Imagine it, like everybody said, Alan Newton spent decades before he was exonerated. But countless years, Alan kept saying, "Where is the evidence? Where is the evidence?" Alan is not alone in this cause. There are many more Alan Newtons in the prison system who are just trying to find evidence to be tested. If we can't find the evidence, we're allowing innocent men to languish in prison for countless years. Those people deserve better, and I hope this council will help us achieve that. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I think the one question I have is, we heard some suggestions, but do you have ideas from other states as to what they're doing correctly, et cetera?
Sure, I can share actually an example from a municipality, Charlotte, North Carolina, which went back and inventoried all of the evidence in their possession currently with barcodes, basically. It was like a UPS system. And so they're able to scan it, easily locate it in their facility. Yes, this took man hours. It does have a cost to it, but they were able to literally barcode every piece of evidence. And during that process, we're able to solve many unsolved cases, right, including rapes, And so, by the way, one of the things I should also note is that the technical working group also recommended retention of biological evidence because, Chair Brewer, you mentioned the importance of sexual assault evidence for the length of the statute of limitations, right, minimally. So they were able to suddenly be able to test things that they couldn't find before. They were able to settle over 15 innocence claims and solve multiple violent crimes.
Does anybody want to add to that?
I would just say, as an example of an effective preservation law, the state of Connecticut requires that evidence be preserved for the length of a person's sentence. And since most of our clients are serving life in prison, we wouldn't have to worry about whether the evidence was still there.
Okay. And do you know if other parts of the state of New York have anything different, or are they just as backward as our city?
It really depends. I mean, that's part of the problem here is it's a patchwork of policies, agency by agency, as opposed to uniformity, which is really what we're seeking when we look for these statewide laws. But certainly at the city level, we should have uniformity as well. But just to say, the smaller jurisdictions it's often easier just because they have less evidence in their possession. But, it's shocking because a lot of the evidence, 80% of evidence rooms is largely misdemeanor evidence that really can be cleared out over a short period of time. But there's nobody in there, sort of re-inventorying the evidence. So, this is a problem across the country, but many states have taken it on and said, listen, at this stage, right, we have to inventory what's in our possession. We can get rid of the evidence we don't need anymore, but we need to save it in these serious violent crime categories, and we need to save it for minimally the length of incarceration. Some states go farther and say for the length of time that someone's, subjected to collateral consequences like sex offender registration or parole or probation, and, I would recommend that. Frankly, that's our recommendation, and the reason that the Department of Justice, that working group narrowed the crime categories was because they understood you can't save every piece of evidence in every case. We get that. But let's focus on the serious violent crime and let's save it regardless of plea, minimally for the length of incarceration for adjudicated cases, and for unsolved cases, minimally for the statute of limitations.
It is shocking to hear about the paperwork in general in the city of New York. Councilmember Hanks.
Yes, thank you so much for your powerful testimony. I don't think many people understand the severity of the situation, so I really appreciate you coming out and enlightening us. So one of the questions I have is, you've mentioned that there are other states that are doing this kind of work. When you look at the price tag of $425 million or to $630 million, does that seem rational as opposed to what other states are doing with the vast amount? I mean, we have a police force of 33,000. We have one of the largest in the country, in the world. So what do you think about the financial ask?
Sure. I mean, I think what they're offering is a more permanent solution, which I support. I mean, I think again, all of these systems a lot of them are paper-based. They're in various entities. It's hard to locate this. It can be also, this evidence can be with court clerks. It can be with hospitals. It can be, this is a way to kind of collect all the evidence, have it in one place. We are supportive of that conceptually. However, it is not like that is the only option. There is also an option to just say, preserve what is currently in your possession in these 5 crime categories. That is the recommendation, and inventory those 5 crime categories. In other words, there are various ways that you could graduate, this solution. I would say, however, that we would certainly not oppose a state-of-the-art solution because I think it would solve to this over time. That said, there are things you could do tomorrow that include just inventorying key evidence and being able to locate it in an electronic system. The fact that we have a paper-based pre-2012 system is petrifying because that's why we can't find evidence.
Thank you.
Are you not getting, even to this day, responses about Erie Basin or other storage questions? Obviously, this came up in your testimony. Go ahead.
Yes, that's correct. We have not heard anything. And we sent 2 letters, and in the second letter we said, you didn't answer our first letter.
I think Mr. Clark will be responding to you, I hope. I see him sitting in the back, and I appreciate him still being here, and I know him to be a person of good faith, so I'm sure he will be responding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are intent on following up. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimonies. We will now hear from Sheila. Last name begins with H. And once again, if we inadvertently missed anyone who would like to testify in person, please visit the sergeant's table and complete a witness slip now. Ma'am, you just have to press the button.
I'm sorry. I'm here on behalf of my son who's incarcerated in Greenhaven Correctional Facility, 25 to life. To start it with the detectives who came out, NYPD went to North Carolina, brought him back here on a wrongful conviction. Till this day, he's been incarcerated 29 years. They have no evidence. They only had a witness, which was 14 years old at the time. They brought her to court when she was 16. And the case of my son, he had an appeal, but there were so many different people that had components in him serving this time that I guess they didn't want to involve these people to bring them out, so they kind of like covered it, and he lost his appeal, which was in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. He's incarcerated right now in Greenhaven Correctional Facility, as I said. He's now in court with the 440 motion that someone had put together for him, and they keep postponing it. And one of the ways we found out that his records were destroyed was because we went to get his records so that we could prepare the 440, and they said they were destroyed and that, there's nothing that could be done about that. So he's had about 5 to 6 adjournments on his case. Again, there's no evidence. It's just the 14-year-old witness that was out at 3:30 in the morning and said that she heard that it was him that had killed the correction officer. The lawyer's wife worked with the correction officer. There's so many different facets to this. It's unbelievable. The story is just like something which you would never believe. And I've been hurting because my son has been brought here, and he could have said he didn't want to come for extradition, but he came because he said he was innocent. As an end result, he's in Greenhaven, in the honor block, not given any problems or whatever. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going to go on the 18th of August, which is his next court date, because he's had a 90-day adjournment, another 90-day adjournment, a 60-day adjournment, and another 60-day adjournment. And it's coincidental that the fire took place like a day before he was going to court in March. So I don't know whether, his records or whatever records they needed were among that fire. I don't know why they keep adjourning it, but I just say there should be some better system going on, because it's not just my son. There's so many, as they would attest to, so many wrongful convictions, and there's hurting parents out here. I did a Zoom meeting with the person with the post-conviction office, and we had a Zoom meeting about my son's case. And we waited another 60 days for her to inform me that anything that we brought up in the 440 should have been brought up during his appeal. Well, if we didn't have that evidence, then how would we know? You lost his records. He has no record. The records are destroyed. I was told by the court clerk that it's normal for them to destroy the records after a certain period of time. Who does that? I don't understand how someone could just take someone's life and just say, you're done. You're guilty and you're done. Like, there's no recall. There's no chance of him coming back, trying to fight for his coming home again. I'm really, really upset. I'm talking kind of fast, but I'm just really praying that something can be done that will correct this system that is so corrupt. There's so many people that took place, and him being able to be sentenced. The 14-year-old was now a lawyer in Washington. So I know, I get it. Everybody that lied to get my son conviction, they don't want these names to be heard. They don't want the judge. They don't want the DA. They don't want the lawyers. They don't want none of these names to come forth. And I don't have anyone bold enough to stand up and say, this is wrong. Something has to be done about this system. My husband was laying in a hospital bed when he was talking on the phone with a Zoom for the DA's office. He was laying up in a hospital bed on Zoom. And all we got was a letter stating that there's nothing that can be done because whatever you did, whatever you presented to us now should have been presented during his appeal. We didn't know this information then. All of this is now coming because we had someone to investigate and get all this together. This young woman now will not come. I asked her to come. Please just tell them that they force you to say what you said. You're the only witness. It was over thousands of people on 125th Street that evening. This is a case that stemmed from a rap video. My son was in a rap video. They used 9 rap videos to convict my son, which had nothing to do with him. He was in an MC Lyte video that took place 2 years before this situation happened. They made the jurors believe that the video was ran behind what he had done, that this is how they presented the video, which means MC Lyte should be on the stand, not my son. He didn't write those lyrics. So I'm just asking and I'm praying that something can be done, not just for my son, but for the many people that have been wrongfully convicted, that they just take so lightly to just toss their records and toss them aside like discarded garbage. That's my son. I love him. And regardless, he has been a model prisoner. For no other reason, he shouldn't be in jail to this day. They ran his sentence consecutive instead of concurrent, another tactic. They don't want him out, because if they let him out, they got to expose each and every person that caused him to be there. And that would bring lots of money and lots of lawsuits, because every person that's connected with these detectives and these lawyers and DAs will all have a chance because of my son. And I know that. And I don't care, how it hurts. If he has to do time after August 18th when he goes to court, he'll finish his time. I just thank God that he's keeping him the whole time he's there.
I just want to thank you for coming out here today to tell us your story. And I want to say to, the NYPD that testified, your story is the reason why we're here, and you should listen to what's being said, because it's not just losing evidence, it's losing lives. And so I'm really very glad that you're still here, but these are the testimonies we don't want to hear. For every piece of evidence that you lose or you mishandle, these are the stories, people's lives, and you have to think of it as if it's your children in that spot. And so we'll be talking offline as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I concur, and he's got a great mom, and I'm glad you're here today because a lot of people are listening, hearing, and I hope it goes well in August. If we can help in any way, we will. Thank you
so
very
much. God bless you all.
Councilmember Joseph also is here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We have now heard from everyone who has signed up to testify. Once more, if we inadvertently missed anyone who would like to testify in person, please visit the sergeant's table and complete a witness slip now. If we inadvertently missed anyone who would like to testify virtually, please use the raised hand function in Zoom, and I will call on you in the order of hands raised. Seeing no one else, I would like to note that written testimony, which will be reviewed in full by committee staff, may be submitted to the record up to 72 hours after the close of this hearing by emailing it to testimony@council.nyc.gov. And now I would like to turn it back over to Chair Brewer.
Thank you very much. Working with the amazing Council Member Chair Hanks, we are concluding this hearing, but not concluding the work that needs to follow up. So thank you all who testified, and there's much more to follow. Thank you all very much.